For 15 years, she diligently mopped their floors, and then, with a resolute stride, she entered the boardroom and dismissed the CEO. She was known as Ms. Denise. It is not Denise Jenkins. Certainly not Denise from accounting. Not Mrs. Jenkins, as she would have liked. Only Ms. Denise, the custodian. Each dawn at 5:45, well ahead of the office lights flickering to life, and the sales team boasting about their latest victories, she was already present, maneuvering a squeaky cart past the frosted glass doors of Crestwell Holdings. Her gray uniform bore the marks of time, its color dulled by years of wear, while her sneakers had succumbed to the relentless rhythm of countless steps along the length of that building. She carried a rag in her pocket, a serene expression gracing her features, and a steady rhythm to her stride, as if this were a task she had mastered long ago. Indeed, she had, in her own manner. 15 years spent amassing a collection of crumpled napkins from conference rooms, gathering gum wrappers discarded on the break room floor, and meticulously wiping away fingerprints from elevator buttons that remained perpetually neglected. To the majority of the individuals employed there, she merged seamlessly into the surroundings, much like the wallpaper that adorned the walls. When she occupied the space, their conversations flowed around her, bypassing her entirely, as if she were a mere specter. Aside from a handful of competent individuals, primarily interns or temporary staff who had yet to grasp that feigning ignorance of her presence was an unspoken rule of the workplace. Yet Denise harbored no bitterness. Initially, that was not the case. She lowered her gaze, remained silent, and absorbed every word. Heard the echoes of laughter drifting from the corner offices, heard the murmurs of discussions that others deemed unworthy of being spoken aloud. The humor, the sheer arrogance, the fabrications. She absorbed all the knowledge she required solely through a mop and a keen set of ears. Once, a marketing representative carelessly abandoned a complete sandwich atop the trash can rather than disposing of it properly within. Denise lifted it, cast it aside in silence. He strolled past, offering not even a word of gratitude. I simply glanced at her and remarked, "Ensure the carpet is dry before our 3 o'clock meeting." She offered a gentle smile and a subtle nod. On the following day, he carelessly spilled coffee on the very same carpet and pointed fingers at her, accusing her of not having cleaned it thoroughly enough. She offered another nod. This was not the inaugural occurrence. This certainly won't be the final chapter. On the 4th floor, Douglas Fairbanks, one of the senior VPs, boisterous and perpetually enveloped in a cloud of cologne, once shared a laugh with his assistant, remarking, "Can you imagine spending your entire career here without even having a desk?" She listened to him. He was indifferent. He remained unaware of her identity. Not a single one did. The building teemed with individuals who believed their titles conferred worth, who were convinced that respect had to be cultivated through quarterly objectives, and the punctuality of 10 a.m. gatherings that ought to have been conveyed through emails. Unbeknownst to them, Denise required no validation from her peers, for she held a greater stake in that company than anyone else within those walls. Yet she had kept it all to herself. Not at this moment. As she maneuvered her cart past the executive offices that morning, she took a moment to wipe a glass wall marred by fingerprints smudging the company logo. In that instant, her phone buzzed softly in her pocket. A single message. Merely a solitary sentence. "We stand prepared, awaiting your cue." She slipped the phone back into her pocket, her face a mask of inscrutability. She continued on her path. Yet, on this occasion, she found herself engaged in more than merely scrubbing floors. She moved forward, an unseen destination drawing her in, while the world remained blissfully unaware. Long before Denise ever grasped a mop within those walls, she found herself seated at a kitchen table in Columbus, Georgia, meticulously analyzing business plans alongside her husband, Roland Jenkins. That was a time before Crestwell Holdings had even emerged as a name, an idea hastily jotted down on the reverse side of a grocery receipt. Roland possessed an unwavering determination. Such a fierce and unrefined ambition is beyond the realm of instruction. He had spent his formative years navigating the winding roads of Alabama and South Carolina, laboring alongside his uncle in the delivery truck business. He possessed an intimate understanding of logistics long before the term supply chain ever entered the lexicon. Denise, in contrast, was the mastermind operating behind the curtain. In public, her words were few, yet her gaze held a keen insight into the complexities of issues. methodically dissecting them to uncover the discordant elements. In 1998, Roland and his companion, Curtis Banning, managed to gather the necessary resources to launch a freight brokerage, beginning with a single rented office, 2 flip phones, and a fax machine that was on its last legs. Denise took the initial step to invest. Upon her father's passing, she received a modest inheritance, a life insurance payout that most people would have allocated towards a down payment on a home. Yet, Denise envisioned something entirely different. "Put it in your name," she instructed Roland one evening. "I shall remain in the shadows. It is best kept a secret." He gazed at her from across the table and inquired, "Are you certain?" "I know what I'm doing," she declared, "and I have faith in you." In the ensuing 6 years, the company experienced remarkable growth. Curtis managed the networking, Roland oversaw the operations, and Denise meticulously monitored every dollar. She managed the accounts, organized the paperwork, and assisted in drafting contracts under a separate LLC she had registered as a precaution. It was her method of safeguarding them both. Yet Roland, he failed to shield himself. In 2004, a tragic accident on I-185 claimed him far too soon. A late-night delivery run, a weary driver, a flipped trailer, all lost in mere seconds. Curtis delivered a lackluster eulogy at the funeral, focused solely on the formalities, scarcely acknowledging Denise. That marked the initial indication. Weeks later, the second event unfolded as Curtis submitted documents that erased Roland's name and subtly excluded Denise from all internal communications. He believed she would vanish. Denise possessed the evidence, the legal documents, meticulously signed from the outset, affirming her equal claim to Roland's share. Moreover, she possessed a distinct advantage. She had the option to sue, to stride into that office accompanied by lawyers and assert her claim to control in that very moment. Yet she chose to remain in anticipation. Denise understood the nuances of power and the art of timing. She uttered not a word, no announcements, no correspondence, only an enveloping silence. In 2007, a job opportunity appeared on a community board in Macon for night janitorial staff at Crestwell Logistics. She traced a circle around it. 2 days later, she entered with a fabricated resume, a borrowed address, and a brand new pair of work shoes. She secured the position immediately. Curtis failed to acknowledge her, not even a single time. By that point, he had long ceased to be the one in charge of the establishment. A fresh name was drifting through the air. Thomas Wexler, a young MBA from Florida State, was oblivious to the intricacies of the company's foundation. Yet he possessed an uncanny ability to embody the appearance of a CEO. Denise maintained her focus, persistently making her presence known. Night by night, floor by floor, a journey spanning 15 years. With each trash can she emptied and every bathroom she scrubbed. It transcended mere cleaning. It was an act of vigilant observation. She attuned her ears, observed keenly, bided her time, and meticulously preserved each and every receipt. Yet in time, that which you conceal inevitably rises to the forefront. Denise was nearing the end of her digging endeavor. By the 10th year, Denise had become intimately familiar with every corner of Crestwell's headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama. She was well aware of the hallway that concealed a loose floorboard, the microwave that emitted sparks with a forceful closure, and the directors who habitually charged personal dinners to company cards. She no longer had to speculate. She was acutely aware of the unfolding events. Crestwell had transformed from a close-knit logistics company into a sprawling impersonal entity, where upper management resided behind glass walls, dispensing jargon while the frontline workers struggled to keep afloat. She observed the warehouse drivers arriving, their backs weary from the day's toil, clutching overtime slips that perpetually lingered in a state of disapproval. She caught the HR ladies murmuring about skimping on health benefits. On more than one occasion, she witnessed mid-level managers being escorted out, dismissed without warning, for breaching protocol. Among them was a man named Terrence Doyle, who erred in voicing his concerns during a staff meeting regarding the inequalities in salary. He vanished in the span of a week. In those rooms, Denise faded into the background, unseen and unnoticed. They spoke freely in her presence, unguarded and unfiltered. Initially, she remained silent, absorbing every word. Yet she began to inscribe her thoughts. Within the confines of her locker, she stashed a small black notebook. carefully hidden behind a plastic bag filled with spare gloves. The pages brimmed with names, dates, quotes, the speakers of each phrase, the moments they were uttered, and the company present in the room. As you peruse the pages, you might come across entries such as Feb 14. We could reduce the bonus pool allocated for the lower-tier staff. They will accept whatever we offer them. Wexler is headed to the CFO's office, room 508. June 3rd. Neglect of warehouse safety violations persists. A man lost his footing. No documentation submitted. Brenda beheld it, August 19th. I overheard Wexler remark, "Let the janitor handle it." That is precisely her role. I found myself positioned precisely at that spot. It was not resentment that drove her. It was a moment of pure clarity. She observed a corporation suffocating in its own hubris. One evening, at approximately 11:45, Denise halted her cart just outside the executive suite on the 6th floor. The corridor lay shrouded in darkness, save for the glow emanating from the main conference room. She caught the sound of laughter drifting from within. Wexler's voice resonated through the air. I said to him, if he finds his pay unsatisfactory, he might as well clock out and take a chance with DoorDash. There are still 20 more resumes awaiting my attention. Joyful sounds erupted. Then one of the VPs, Meredith Chandler, remarked that half of these individuals ought to feel thankful we even permitted them entry into the building. Once more, their laughter filled the air. Denise lingered in the shadows, unnoticed. After a brief pause, she turned and left, not fueled by anger, but rather with a sense of affirmation. With each glimpse, her comprehension deepened. This place was shattered beyond repair. It was decayed. They were resolute, unmoved by mere requests for change. Replacement was necessary. She began to devise her plans, subtly, one fragment at a time. In the dimly lit back room of a diner along US Highway 280, she sat across from her attorney, Elliot Miles, a man whose demeanor was both discreet and direct. She extended a flash drive toward him. Within lay a trove of years' worth of notes, photographs, recorded dialogues. Every detail she had meticulously chronicled from the very beginning. Elliot remained silent for an extended period after experiencing it. He turned to her, his gaze steady, and remarked, "You realize that once you take this step, it will reverberate throughout the entire building." Denise gave a subtle nod. "It is already trembling." They remained blissfully unaware. He offered a smile. "I will begin the process of drafting the necessary paperwork." A straightforward plan unfolded before them. Allow them to stride directly into their own snare. Allow them to continue believing she was merely a cleaning lady. Allow them to misjudge her once again. She desired for them to be assured, at ease, for the descent always feels more profound when the precipice remains unseen. Yet, there are moments when even the most enduring flame craves a single spark, and that spark was poised to ignite on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. It all began with a humble paper plate. Denise had just completed her task in the third-floor break room, meticulously wiping down the counters, disposing of the trash, and replenishing the so-called premium powdered creamer. As she strolled along the lengthy corridor of the conference, her gaze fell upon it. A half-eaten slice of birthday cake languishes in the center of the hallway floor. A fork protruding from it, chocolate smudged across the carpet. It lay abandoned, carelessly discarded, not even placed upon a surface, but simply let fall. She lowered herself gradually, not out of necessity, but because there was an intentionality to that plate, as if someone had placed it there to observe her reaction. As she lifted it, a voice echoed in her ears. "A spot has been overlooked." There stood Wexler at the end of the hallway, hands tucked into his pockets, a smirk playing on his lips as if he were a man untouched by fear. She tilted her head ever so slightly. "Beg your pardon." He approached her with deliberate slowness. "Right there," he indicated, gesturing to the floor beside the spot she had just tidied. "A client presentation is about to take place in this space. Could you take another look at the floor before they arrive?" Not a single mark was found, not even a hint of a scuff. Denise rose, a cake plate balanced in one hand, while the other gripped the mop handle firmly. She remained silent. Wexler gazed at her, a chuckle escaping his lips as if she were in on a secret shared only between them. "Honestly, there are moments when it feels like some of you merely feign cleaning just to stretch out your time here." For a fleeting moment, her eyes narrowed. Which individuals are we referring to? She inquired. He took a moment to stop. Oh, come on, he remarked, a chuckle escaping his lips. Try not to take things too personally. What I'm suggesting is that if I were to offer you a bit more, perhaps you would discover the spots ahead of me. She blinked once, her face a blank canvas. She nodded in response. I'll ensure it's immaculate, she declared. Wexler brought his hands together with a sharp clap. That resonates with me. He strode away, a sense of pride swelling within him, convinced he had shown her her rightful position. He was completely unaware. That evening, Denise chose not to return home immediately. She made her way to the Crestwell Records room, a space she had the privilege of accessing quietly after hours. Grateful for the badge she had borrowed from a manager who had once carelessly left it on a sink, she had held onto it for months just in case. With swift determination, she gathered files, captured photographs, sifted through emails, and reviewed budget reports. Most crucially, she printed the bonus report from that very quarter. It revealed that Wexler had awarded himself a performance bonus of $55,000 for his operational excellence. In the interim, he had slashed meal stipends for employees, lowered overtime rates for drivers, and put a halt to raises for both custodial and warehouse personnel. It was the following morning when the last straw was drawn. Cynthia, one of the janitors, entered the locker room in tears. Her adolescent son had been involved in a car accident, prompting her to request a day off to go to the hospital. Her plea was turned down. Refused. Insufficient coverage, they remarked. Denise remained seated, absorbed in the sounds around her. Cynthia struggled to complete a sentence, her words choked by tears. The indifference of the executive office was palpable. She existed merely as a name on the schedule. Denise remained silent. She rose to her feet, retrieved her phone from her bag, and made her way outside. She reached out to Elliot. The moment has arrived, she declared. Are you certain? I am certain. Very well, he responded. Chaos is on the horizon. I've spent my entire life tidying up chaos, she remarked. Let us embark on this journey. In the ensuing 48 hours, Denise set the wheels in motion. She presented her lawyer with the last of the receipts, orchestrated a private shareholder meeting, and arranged for an urgent review under her legal entitlements as the majority holder. Ironically, not a single one of them seemed to notice. Not even when she entered the following day adorned in a fresh coat, a neatly pressed blouse, and shoes that had clearly evaded the touch of a mop for months. She strode by the front desk, her gaze never lingering on her former cart. She ascended in the elevator to the 8th floor, heading directly to the boardroom. Yet the words she was about to utter would not merely alter the course of her own existence. It would dismantle all their preconceived notions of power. The boardroom at Crestwell Holdings featured 12 leather chairs, an extravagant chandelier, and a custom table, valued at $14,000, that had been flown in from Seattle. Wexler once boasted about its authenticity as real walnut, as if that held any significance for the janitors tasked with scraping gum from beneath it. At 10 o'clock in the morning, with a decisive edge, the quarterly review commenced. Wexler positioned himself at the head of the table, arms crossed, tie askew, exuding an air of ownership over the very atmosphere surrounding him. Beside him, Meredith Chandler occupied her seat, serving as his trusted second-in-command. Beside her stood Curtis Banning, the sole man in the room who ought to have anticipated what lay ahead. Yet, he did not. Denise entered 5 minutes later, quiet as a breath held in anticipation. Without a mop or gloves, she stood there, clad in a navy blue blazer, a folder clutched firmly in her hand. Wexler's brow furrowed in discontent. Apologies, but we are currently engaged in a meeting. Maintenance is expected to arrive after hours. She remained utterly still, her gaze unwavering. I am not present for upkeep. The room transformed. Meredith narrowed her eyes at her. Excuse me, may I inquire if you have a scheduled appointment? I do, Denise said, her footsteps measured as she made her way to the far end of the table. I am confident that the shareholders received the appropriate notifications. At that moment, Elliot entered quietly behind her, briefcase in hand, exuding an air of calmness. Good morning, he remarked. I am Elliot Miles, serving as legal counsel for Mrs. Denise Jenkins, the majority shareholder of Cresswell Holdings. Stillness. Wexler's lips parted, yet silence enveloped him. Denise placed the folder on the table, revealing signed partnership agreements from 1998, updated ownership documents, and a notarized letter that conferred full voting rights to her following the death of Roland Jenkins. Curtis shifted in his seat as if the ground had suddenly given way beneath him. "No," he murmured. "That simply cannot be correct." Denise faced him. "Do you recall the contracts, Curtis? You contributed to their creation?" Silence enveloped him. She advanced, her voice steady and soft. "For 15 years I observed this place transform into something utterly unrecognizable. I observed you inflate your bonuses, overlook safety violations, and penalize employees for merely seeking basic decency." Her gaze locked onto Wexler. "I observed as you transformed my husband's company into a mere stage for your inflated sense of self." Wexler attempted to brush it aside with a chuckle. This is a misinterpretation. This situation feels like a perplexing scam to me." "This isn't a scam," Elliot interjected. "Every document has undergone verification. At this juncture, Mrs. Jenkins has initiated a vote of no confidence regarding the incumbent CEO. She possesses the power to act in accordance with the original shareholder agreement." Wexler rose to his feet, placing both hands firmly on the table. "Your actions reveal a lack of understanding." Denise circled the table with deliberate slowness, meeting the gaze of each individual in turn. 15 years, she remarked. "You all gazed beyond me as if I were invisible. You allow others to endure pain. This company has been allowed to decay. I offered you countless opportunities to demonstrate a semblance of compassion." She halted at Wexler's chair. "You have not succeeded." His face flushed with a deep crimson hue. "Do you really believe you can simply stroll in and seize control?" She inclined her body forward. "I embody the essence of the company." Elliot set a modest pile of letters before each member of the board. "Effective immediately, the contract of Mr. Thomas Wexler is hereby terminated. The authorities have been alerted." Wexler's voice trembled. "This cannot be done." Curtis whispered softly to himself. "She has already taken care of it." Silence enveloped them as they stood, each moment stretching into the next unbroken by a single utterance. Wexler scanned the room for support, but discovered he was alone. He seized his phone, his pride, and stormed out, closely trailed by Meredith, who abruptly recalled she had another meeting to attend. As the last of the crowd dissipated, Denise pivoted her attention back to the board. "I'm not here to play the role of boss," she remarked. "I am here to restore the essence of what this place once represented." Among the younger members of the board, Jonas Evers, who had just crossed the threshold of 30, lifted his hand. "What would you like to tackle first?" Denise wore a smile. "Begin by paying attention to those whose voices have been silenced for far too long." With a decisive motion, she shut the folder. "Transformation begins now. However, removing the garbage does not necessarily equate to a clean house." Denise understood that the true journey was just commencing. On the subsequent Monday morning, Denise found herself parking in the executive lot for the very first time. Her discontent wasn't rooted in the expanse itself. It loomed larger, drew nearer, shielded from the downpour. Yet there was an air of disconnection about that lot, as if it had been set aside for those unfamiliar with the essence of hard work and the sting of sweat. Nevertheless, she parked the car, strode inside with her head held high. She acknowledged the front desk receptionist with a warm greeting, using their name. "Greetings, Tasha, and a wonderful morning to you." The young woman fluttered her eyelids. "Is this Miss Denise?" Now it is solely Denise. She entered the elevator. Without a mop or a cleaning cart in sight. Only a notepad and a packed calendar remain. By 9:30 a.m., she found herself in her office, the walls freshly painted, yet the same window view that Wexler once boasted about remained unchanged. Yet, she hardly devoted any moments to gazing outside. There is an overwhelming amount of tasks awaiting attention indoors. What was the first thing she did? A staff meeting was convened. This is not intended for the board, exclusively for those beyond the boardroom. For the staff, all are welcome. Drivers, administrative staff, custodians, and customer service representatives. The room filled rapidly. Expressions of confusion flickered across faces, while others wore a mask of suspicion. Anticipation hung in the air, a palpable uncertainty that left everyone guessing. Denise entered the room, taking her place at the forefront. There's no microphone available, only her voice. "I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude," she started. "Many of you were unaware of my existence. You were not required to do so. Your work resonated more profoundly than any title within these walls." She hesitated. "I am here to initiate change, yet I cannot do it alone. For years, I have absorbed your frustrations, your fears, and your ideas, silently. At this moment, I yearn to listen to their voices resonate in the air." Individuals began to adjust in their seats. It fell short of their expectations. A driver by the name of Alonzo lifted his hand. "Does this imply that we will receive our overtime compensation again?" "Indeed," Denise remarked. "Additionally, the retroactive payment for the previous 2 quarters. It will be reflected in Friday's check." Deborah, a woman from AR, rose to her feet. "What about the health coverage? Each passing year seems to bring a decline, deepening the troubles we face." Denise mentioned that they are currently in the process of evaluating new providers. Each employee will receive a survey to share their thoughts. Gone are the days of hidden choices regarding your health and happiness. No applause breaks punctuated the performance. No exaggerated responses. Only quietude. And then whispers echoed. Individuals glanced at one another, as if gradually coming to the understanding that she was indeed serious. A question arose. What of those individuals whom Wexler dismissed without justification? She replied that they were in the process of reviewing those terminations. If you have been unjustly let go, you will receive communication. While certainty eludes us, there is a promise that your name will emerge unscathed, at the very least. A voice emerged from the rear. "Are you truly the owner?" Denise wore a smile. "I've always been." With a solitary vow, she brought the meeting to a close. "When you share your thoughts, I will be here to hear them. Through diligence, respect shall be earned." Following that, the challenges only multiplied. They became more challenging. The remaining executives were far from embracing her arrival with enthusiasm. A handful attempted to obstruct her choices, contending that she lacked the necessary business acumen. One even pondered whether she possessed the knowledge to foster growth on a larger scale. Denise gazed at him and remarked, "I have contained my grief in silence for 15 years. I believe I can handle your spreadsheets with ease." That silenced him. She introduced fresh leadership by promoting from within the ranks, appointing new department heads, individuals who had long been disregarded. She revised vendor contracts, restructured warehouse leases, and reinstated the annual Employee Appreciation Day that had inexplicably vanished from the budget years prior. She traversed each department, engaged in conversation, shared meals in the break room, and lent an attentive ear. Gradually, the atmosphere of the building shifted, taking on a new essence. Not gentler, just more authentic. Not gentler, just more authentic. On a fateful night, Cynthia, the janitor burdened by the sorrow of her son's tragic accident, slipped a note into Denise's office. It expressed a sentiment of disbelief, reflecting on the notion that individuals such as ourselves could ever reach a destination of that caliber. "You have demonstrated that I was mistaken." Denise tucked that note away in her top drawer. Yet, despite the myriad of transformations, a singular question lingered, surfacing in hushed tones. Denise understood that she would need to respond to it. What caused her to linger in anticipation for such an extended period? The question echoed in her ears, a refrain she encountered time and again. "What made you hesitate, Denise?" Some inquired with a sense of wonder, while others approached with skepticism. A handful harbored a subtle bitterness, as if perhaps she had allowed it to linger for far too long. Yet Denise remained unflappable. She would recline in her chair, interlace her fingers, and utter the same phrase each time. Power holds significance solely when one possesses the wisdom to wield it effectively. Denise did not hesitate due to fear. She lingered, allowing the company to reveal its true essence, untainted by her presence. She had to witness it firsthand, had to let the decay emerge into the light. Had she intervened prematurely, they would have deemed her response an overreaction. They would have manipulated her perception, twisting the narrative to suggest she was merely creating a fuss over trivial matters. Yet 15 years of silence? That rendered her irrefutable. She perceived it all. She allowed it to unfold, and when the moment arrived, she offered no resistance. She unveiled the truth to them. They buckled beneath the burden of their own choices. The custodian had transformed into the observer, and ultimately, the judge. One afternoon, she strolled back into the very hallway where Wexler had once gestured toward the spot she had overlooked. Identical carpet, identical light. Now, however, it was immaculate, and no one had the audacity to speak condescendingly to her. An intern brushed past her in the hallway, hesitated for a moment, and said with a hint of nervousness, "Hi, Mrs. Jenkins." Her lips curved into a smile. Only Denise. That afternoon, she welcomed a select group of colleagues to the company courtyard for a small gathering. Without grand speeches or vibrant banners, the scene was simply food trucks and folding chairs, filled with the sound of laughter once more. Alonzo, the driver, gently tapped his soda can against hers. The sound of brief celebration in the quiet of the moment. To those who dwell in silence, he spoke. Denise lifted her can. To those who took them by surprise. The takeaway, it transcended mere possession. It explored the ease with which we form judgments about individuals based on their attire. How swiftly we tend to overshadow the voice of someone wielding a mop. How quickly we leap to the conclusion that worth is linked to job titles and corner offices. Denise was not an exception. She served as the poignant reminder. Individuals do not vanish simply because your gaze has shifted away from them. At times, it is the individual who meticulously crafted the very structure who finds themselves humbly sweeping the floor. Consider taking a moment to greet that colleague you've yet to engage with. A simple hello can open the door to connection. One can never truly ascertain who possesses the keys to the entire edifice. If this tale caused you to reflect, even momentarily, pass it along. For at this very moment, another Miss Denise exists, being disregarded, belittled, and rendered invisible. Perhaps, just perhaps, she is observing. Inform her that we acknowledge her presence at this moment.